Hi, I'm Robert Petit. If you have ever taught anything, if you were president of a club and had to teach something, if you were captain of a sports team and had to teach, or if you were a teacher, as I know there are a couple out there, could you raise your hand? Okay, that's a good number of people. As you probably have found out with your teaching, oftentimes it comes with a surprise. Students will come out of left field and really blow you away with some of the information that they pick up from you. And one important thing about it is that it's not always the top 10% of the class. It's not the students who do the best on tests or always do their homework, but sometimes it's that back of the class type of person who might not even be awake through all your lessons, but one time when they are awake, they pick up something interesting and run with it. And so I have a small story about possibly the most amazing person I will ever meet. It all started last summer. I was a rising junior in high school, and I got a job teaching, well, helping develop lessons for a small nonprofit that's about half a mile that way, where we were supposed to teach IT to, it was basically just an IT outreach program. We were teaching IT to underprivileged kids or kids who lacked the opportunity. And I worked there for about a month, just kind of developing and assisting in teaching lessons, and then they asked me to teach one. And I found out that I would be teaching at what's called Cyber Saturday. There's actually one going on right now, and it is a monthly occurrence, and it's free, and you register ahead of time, and you come and learn kind of an introductory 4-hour course to a basic facet of IT. And I was charged with teaching high school students for 4 hours on a Saturday. And I decided to teach them Python. And if you know anything about Python, then you know it's actually kind of interesting and very easy to teach. So I worked up a small self-paced lesson where the kids went and kind of worked on about 35 activities and moved through the lesson for the duration of the 4 hours. And I was really just there to assist in their learning. And so I worked up this lesson, and the way that these lessons are set up, you register ahead of time and you come. But a lot of times kids will hear about it and just kind of walk in off the street without having registered. And if the class was fully booked, we will turn them away. But if there were empty seats that weren't registered for, we'll let just kind of whoever comes first sit in on the lesson. And if you're one of the people in the audience who doesn't know about Python, you will know it's not actually that interesting unless you know something about it. So there weren't a ton of kids who were too excited, and we had only about half the seats filled. So when kids started coming in, we let some people who hadn't registered join in on this lesson. And as the lesson got underway, I noticed that, as I expected, some kids were working more diligently and were probably through about 20 to 35 lessons by about the halfway break, and some were kind of messing around and were maybe through 10. But there was one kid in the back who was going abnormally slow. He had only made it through 1. And it didn't seem like he was really messing around. It didn't look like he knew anybody who was there. It looked like he was really, really working. So when I passed him towards the halfway and he had only finished 1, I was concerned. So when we released everybody for snack, I pulled him aside and I said, "Hey, are you okay? Like, is something wrong? Does your computer not work? Do you need some extra help working through this stuff?" And he looked at me and he gave me a response that I don't think I'm going to forget anytime soon. Because what he told me was that he couldn't read. This was a high school student, somebody who was my age or older, and I'm sitting here trying to teach computer science, and he can't read. And that stunned me. Not just that he couldn't read, but he was also so open about it. Like, he didn't think it was an issue. Just, "Oh, no, I don't know how to read." And that kind of took me back. And so I asked him some questions, and I found out that the only reason he came is because he heard that we had name brand snacks like Nutri-Grain bars, and he had never gotten the chance to try any. And he was from a very, very poor family and wanted to come and have some Nutri-Grain bars. And so he came to this lesson. And I didn't really know what to say, so feeling a little bit guilty that I had kept him from the snacks that were his only reason for coming, I sent him off and let him go eat. And I kind of went on with the rest of the lesson not really knowing what to do. And I worked through the lesson and helped everybody who was kind of there, and I just left him in the back to keep working on his computer. I was actually kind of surprised that he came back at all. And towards the end of the lesson, after some thought, I put him aside again, and I said, hey, do you want to learn to read? And he said, I mean, I wish I had. I can't read, I can't do math, I'd like to know these things. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't teach those things to you, but I'm sure if you go to the library, you can maybe find some help there. And if you've ever spent any amount of time at a library, you will probably know that a librarian can help you with just about anything. They're actually magic. So I figured that'd be a good place to send him. And then my summer kind of tapered off to an end. I went back to school, and I didn't see him again until a little bit later in the year, and I'm working on a school project, and I have to go down to the library to get some books. And I'm walking into the library, coffee in hand, and I see him running towards me with just this huge, wonky smile on his face. And he's like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Hi." It took me a second to even really remember who he was. And then the next thing that he told me really blew me away, because he told me that he had learned to read, and that he had gone to the library and gotten some help. And he said, "Yeah, I'm reading now. I'm reading books." And I was like, oh my God, somebody actually learned something that I taught them. Who would have thought that that was possible? And so he was in a rush and kind of rushed out, and I never even learned his name and didn't get any other way to get in contact with him. So that got me thinking. And if there's a quote on the roof of the Library of Congress, and it's by a famous Chinese philosopher, Confucius. And the quote is, the most productive thing any person can do is to impart guidance on those who can't procure it for themselves. And that was a quote that I learned long after, but I thought about that kind of line of thought a little bit, and I realized really what had happened. Because I hadn't taught him to read. I didn't go down and teach him about the alphabet or sound out the whole thing with him. I didn't give him any fact about reading or math, but I had given him a little tiny foothold, just one way that he could learn how to do something. And he had taken this knowledge and snowballed it into something that seemed to both of us forever beyond him. And so I would encourage you to try and do something the same. When you wake up in the morning, obviously get up and try and go learn something, but it could be more productive for you to instead try and teach something. Because while you may spend all day learning the same thing as your peers, and some of the knowledge you have may seem insignificant to you, I promise you that there's somebody out there who doesn't know that stuff. They never learn these things, and if you were to give them some guidance on learning it, it could change their life in ways that you can't imagine. So go out and try and teach everybody around you something new every day, and see what comes of it that you didn't think possible before. Thanks.